Talking baseball, baseball and the
Oh, welcome back, Birdland, to another episode of the Talkin Orioles Baseball Podcast. Episode 44, Spring Ripples. I'm very excited about the episode we have today. As you know, I'm very excited to be sitting down here talking Baltimore Orioles baseball with all of you. I'm your host, Benny Becker. Like I said, fantastic episode we have on our hands today. Talking a little injury reports, whether it be Grayrod or Gunnar, the roster ripples from those injuries and other spring standouts. Felix Bautista, Coby Mayo, Basallo, homers, and optimism. That is what we are discussing on today's episode. It's going to be a fantastic one, gang. Very excited. And unlike a lot of these episodes, we're kind of going to skip over all of the spring training games that's happened since our last episode. Usually I would fill you in on any games, but the fact that it's spring training, we are going to essentially fast forward through any of that action. Certainly there were cool things between, like I said, Coby Mayo, Basallo. Obviously in the spring standout games, we saw electric stuff from Enrique Bradfield, Vance Honeycutt, some of our premier outfield prospects at this point. So very exciting stuff and cool stuff happening. But as spring training winds down, we can't help but be very, very excited, over the moon excited for the start of the baseball season. And a lot of important topics to talk about. I really feel like a topic later that we have you guys are going to enjoy is breaking down why the Orioles may lead the league in home runs this season. Very excited for the power potential of these birds this year. So we might as well jump right in, gang, starting with some injury updates. Unfortunately, Grayson Rodriguez, as I'm sure many of you know, has gotten shut down at this point. Now, I think we got lucky with this one. Certainly, Birdland can't help but put themselves right back a year ago when we started spring training last year with the Kyle Bradish and John Means and Tyler Wells all going down. And certainly, we saw Bradish and Means come back at some point, but yet they each had to go back down and get Tommy John, and it sucked, gang. So we have a bad taste in our mouth. At first, when I first saw the Grayrod news break, I got very nervous. Again, bad taste in my mouth. It put me right back to last year with Kyle Bradish, and I thought for sure, he's done for the year. Tommy John, this sucks. We've been talking up Grayson Rodriguez as really the ace of this staff now, and how we felt that based off of what he learned from Corbin Burns last year and just the experiences he's had through the last couple years, he was ready to take that next jump and become an elite ace starter in this league. An injury certainly isn't going to help that, gang. But I want to believe, knock on wood, we got out of this one maybe unscathed. All right, now, he's shut down for 7 to 10 days. In fact, he's supposed to start playing catch tomorrow, which is a good sign. Hopefully he's starting to play catch. Ultimately, he was shut down because of elbow and tricep soreness. He got cortisone injections, but it's believed at this point that there's no ligament damage. So again, while the future is uncertain, and it's certainly possible maybe eventually he needs to go under the knife and get Tommy John, I'm hoping, I'm praying, just like all of you, that that's not going to be the case. And that Grayson Rodriguez only just needed a quick break. A little shutdownness. You know what I mean? 7 to 10 days of just doing nothing, throwing, and hopefully that pain subsides and goes away. And even if the pain lingers somewhat, as long as there's not the ligament damage, hopefully he can avoid Tommy John, which is ultimately the worst case scenario for these pitchers. The quotes are relatively optimistic, and that's why I feel like we maybe got out lucky. Quote, having some discomfort in the back of his elbow, so we're still trying to get multiple opinions. The multiple opinions part makes you start worrying, but then the next quote makes you exhale because they say it's probably not ligament damage, so we're not concerned about that. Frankly, if they were concerned about it, they've been relatively honest with the fans about, hey, listen, it is ligament damage. We're hoping to maybe not do Tommy John. So the fact that there is no ligament damage, at least seen at this point, is a huge, huge positive, gang, for all of us. They're still getting the results and talking to multiple people, but more about what the treatment is, not necessarily what the diagnosis is. Which, again, just to me, has a vibe of positivity, a vibe of optimism, a vibe of getting out alive. Quote, the timeline we're still not sure on, but it's not the ligament. Reiterating, it's not the ligament. Phenomenal. So they've said he's basically just a few weeks back, 2, maybe 3 weeks behind everybody else. So you expect to see him, let's say at the end of April, around 420-ish, maybe beginning of May, if they really are cautious, which I expect them to be. I also don't necessarily expect them to be forced into forcing him out there if he's still in discomfort. But that we are going to touch on more, and why I'm getting optimistic about this pitching staff despite the Gray News injury. The MVP of last year's Orioles, Gunnar Henderson, gang, is finally back on the field. He's resumed baseball activities, some light hitting, some light ground ball work. They're going to ease him back. They're still saying opening day is technically in question. I doubt we see Gunnar again in a spring training game this year. But I expect to see him on opening day. Again, this is a guy that's avoided the IL his entire career. I equated this multiple times to his oblique injury last year in spring training and how there was doubt that maybe he would miss opening day, and also doubt that maybe that oblique would hinder him in the beginning of the year. Neither was the case. He was there opening day. He was an MVP candidate from day one. And it's great to see that Gunnar, again, just like possibly Grayson, avoided serious injury with his injury. Now, another name we talked about on the last episode being injured was new reliever Andrew Kittredge. He's going to be getting shut down for a few months, had to have knee surgery. But we previously talked about this on the last episode, how this may be the best thing, not only for Kittredge, but the Orioles in the long run of the season, gang. Because, again, he's a 34-year-old reliever. Some great swing and miss stuff. And a guy that I would love to have in our bullpen down the stretch and in the postseason. But I don't necessarily think it's necessary for him to start the season with the team. And if anything, I could argue, and have argued, it might even be beneficial to have Andrew Kittredge on the IL to start the season like he's going to. Because frankly, that's going to allow Brian Baker or a different fringe reliever to make this team show what they can produce at the major league level. I believe it's going to be Brian Baker. And hopefully, by the time Kittredge is coming back, he can just maybe slot right into a guy that maybe needs an IL stint at that point. Or at the very least, we can make a more educated decision on who doesn't belong on this roster to bring Kittredge back. So ultimately, gang, I think it's beneficial not only with roster construction, like I was just talking about, but also keeping Kittredge fresh for the stretch run and the postseason. Again, he's 34 years old. If you throw him all season long, that arm can maybe tire out towards the end. Hopefully this time, he's fresh when we need him the most. So now we have a few infielders dealing with some injuries, aside from Gunnar Henderson. Jorge Mateo, like we know, has been coming back from that elbow injury, that gruesome elbow injury last season. He's actually started taking BP and doing some defensive drills, just like Gunnar. So very excited about Mateo. However, he's still, quote, pretty doubtful to make the opening day roster. I think, again, roster construction-wise, the Orioles would rather start him on the IL. That way they can ensure that a Ramon Urias has his spot. Having said that, who's next on our injury report? Ramon Urias. Now, it's just some hamstring soreness. I expect him to be back in action, whether it be today or in the next couple days. I don't think Urias is going to miss opening day. And because of that, I don't think he's going to miss the opening day roster. Certainly, though, him popping up with an injury this close to the season could mean there's a chance he starts the season on the IL. Another guy that then would be a replacement, potentially, for Ramon Urias also finds himself on the injury report, if you will, Emmanuel Rivera with shoulder soreness. Again, just like Urias, his hamstring soreness, I don't think that's really going to affect, let's say, going on the IL by opening day. However, Rivera probably was the number one guy in line to make the team if Urias or a Gunnar wasn't ready for opening day. Now, if all three, Mateo, Urias, and Rivera, are on the IL come opening day, let's assume Gunnar is on the team opening day and not on the IL, there's really two names for that roster spot. And that's Vamil Machine, who I wouldn't be surprised if he has a bit of a role on this team throughout the season. To me, hopefully, he's not on the opening day roster, but more that speaks to not wanting other guys to be injured. The other guy would be Coby Mayo, who we've talked a lot about this camp, a lot about his struggles. And later this episode, we're going to talk a lot about not necessarily him struggling, at least him putting some good contact on the ball, at least him getting some hits, but more of that to come. So hopefully Urias is healthy for opening day. That's where that roster spot goes. When Jorge Mateo's ready to come back, maybe a couple weeks later, we will see where the odd man out lies. But I believe that that's kind of where we stand. And before we move on to the next topic, we always talk about in spring training, the number one important key to spring training being successful is staying healthy. Now, we've had some scares, Gunnar, Grayson, but hopefully the big names aren't actually real big injuries. And maybe the, quote, big injury, like Andrew Kittredge, is actually a blessing in disguise, is actually beneficial to this team down the line. And that's going to take us right into our next segment, the roster ripples. We just talked about that backup utility infield spot and the ripples that might cause if a Urias hits the IL, if a Rivera hits the IL, if Mateo isn't back by opening day like we expect. Well, let's talk about the Gray Rod ripple, because he will start the season on the IL. Like we said, end of April, beginning of May, and that's probably our best case scenario, gang. That's if everything is back, healthy, feeling good. Again, no ligament damage was ever found, and everything is rolling positively for Gray Rod. So let's assume that's the case. Him starting the season on the IL essentially locks up the roster spot for Dean Kramer. We've talked about how that fifth rotation spot, if there was any battle, that's the spot that would be battling. And really, Dean Kramer was holding on for dear life because he hasn't necessarily had the best spring training. Had some good appearances, had some bad appearances. And it was looking like there was a chance maybe a Cade Povich or somebody like that could push Kramer out of that spot. It seems like with Grayson going on the IL to start the year, Dean Kramer locks up that rotation spot and gives himself a chance to be a part of this rotation this season. Because again, just because you start the season in the rotation does not mean that you're guaranteed that rotation spot the rest of the year. Certainly, we hope Grayson Rodriguez comes back. We're optimistic that eventually Kyle Bradish will come back. That's two big names, guys, that need to find spots in that rotation when they come back. So you need to perform, or else you might be the one out the door. But Dean Kramer's going to have that opportunity to begin the season, I believe. And then we still now need a fifth starter. And I believe it goes to the guy that I had just previously mentioned was pushing Kramer for that fifth spot. And that's Cade Slim Povich, who's shown phenomenal stuff this camp. Not only have we seen the positive results, seen the positive stat lines for the most part, but also Cade just seems to have a better aura about him. A more confident Cade Povich is in camp this year. And I believe it's showing not just on the field, but also off the field. And that's why Cade Povich, to me, is the most likely to make this team now in that fifth rotation spot. Gives the Orioles the left-handed pitcher in the starting rotation as well, which is always nice to kind of switch it up. But also, don't forget how successful Cade Povich was at the end of last year in September. Phenomenal stuff in, I believe, 5 of his 6 starts or 4 of his last 5 starts, whatever it was. Cade Povich could come in and really secure himself a rotation spot with a good start to this season. I love the idea that Cade Povich now gets the chance to start the season on the roster, in the rotation, and maybe in a month, when Gray Rod's coming back, he's not the one that's so easily moved down. Maybe he's sitting there with a ERA in the mid-3s. Maybe he's sitting with like a 3-1 record. I could see it. I could see it, gang. Look out for Cade Povich to make this team now. Now, with Andrew Kittredge and his injury and him starting the season on the IL, and he'll be on the IL for a few months, at least 2, maybe even 3 months as he rehabs from the knee. As you know, I believe Brian Baker is the most likely to make this team now out of camp. He's had a pretty good spring. We've heard positive things. Over the past couple years, he has had good stints for the Orioles. He has had good appearances. He doesn't necessarily always put it together. He's not always the most consistent in that time. Hopefully, though, this gives him the chance to not only make the roster, but make the impression on the roster to really hold up that spot and become a very useful member of this bullpen this season. Now, I'm expecting, like I said, Gray Rod. I keep doing this. Gunnar Henderson. I expect Gunnar Henderson to be ready for opening day. Again, there's no official word on that, but just in my heart of hearts, in my mind, the way I've heard them talk about it, the way they're ramping him up currently, I feel very confident he will be there opening day. And we already talked about the other ripples for the infielders as far as utility infielders go. So that's going to take us to our next topic as opening day approaches. By the way, seem to have misplaced my number 1 Orioles koozie. So we're going with the backup koozie, gang. We're deep here. Just like the Orioles in their roster, we are deep here with Orioles koozies. I do need to find that other one because it's from the 90s and it is just nostalgic, right? And it's cooler than this one that I believe I maybe got at Pickles a year or 2 ago. Neither here or there. Opening day is approaching fast, gang. We're about 2 weeks away, or exactly, 2 weeks away from the home opener. We only have 10 spring training games left. We have about a week and a half till opening day of the actual season. And frankly, the roster feels mostly set, especially after the pitching injuries to Gray Rod and to Kittredge. Again, there weren't many roster battles, but the few that we found were in that fifth rotation spot, of which we just talked about might be locked up now, and the last man in the bullpen. Now, we felt Albert Suarez would be that long guy, but we felt Brian Baker and maybe another name or two could push for that roster spot, and we were just wondering where it was going to come. Well, with Andrew Kittredge being on the shelf for a couple months, now it seems like Brian Baker, or whoever the top reliever in these Orioles' minds that was maybe on the outs, is now on the in. Also, it feels like, as long as Gunnar is healthy and on the opening day roster, we're pretty much set. Nothing this spring has made me say, oh, this guy isn't going to make the team now, or, oh, we need to put this guy on the team. Certainly Sam Basallo, as we'll talk about in a little, has been doing everything he can to expedite his call up to the majors. But, as we'll mention and discuss later, I just don't see where, one, the roster spot is right now, and two, the Orioles really making that jump and that leap to do that. Early, at least. So, obviously, when we look at spring training, there are guys that you would like to see maybe playing better. Mullins and O'Hearn maybe didn't hit the best this spring. Not terrible, and they're veterans. I'm not concerned about either of them. Between Kramer, like we talked about, even Zach Eflin and Albert Suarez, you would like to see maybe them start pitching better. They've had some rough outings. I'm not that concerned about Zach Eflin by any means. Again, a consummate professional, a veteran, understands what needs to be done. Albert, I feel okay about still, but maybe has a little feel of lightning in a bottle last season, and maybe he's reverting back to the Albert Suarez that had to go play baseball in Korea. Who knows? And Dean Kramer, I'm not too concerned. I think that he's shown a lot of growth the past few years. But with the left field wall moving in, he's certainly liable to give up a little more home runs when we get to Baltimore. And we'll see. There's a lot of pressure, again, on him performing well to keep that spot once Grayson Rodriguez and hopefully eventually Kyle Bradish come back into this rotation. Overall, though, I am feeling very optimistic about these Orioles right now, especially when you look at them compared to the other division opponents. You have the Yankees, who are reeling with injuries. I think we got off lucky with our, quote, big name injuries. The Yankees did not. Garrett Cole out for the year. Tommy John. Giancarlo Stanton, who knows if he'll ever be back, from what I'm hearing. I think it was his shoulder. It's just so messed up. They don't even know if he'll ever play again. And maybe, even if he does, it's not this year. No word on that. They don't have Luis Gil to start the season. So they're still a tough team. They have tough guys. And frankly, I think the Yankees don't get enough credit for some of their young talent. Okay? If I can just be fully transparent and not a homer and not show my Yankees hatred full out. You know, guys like Austin Wells, guys like Jason Dominguez, guys like Ben Rice are all showing me interesting things. Volpe, I think, gets a little overhyped, and there's always that Jeter comparison sort of thing, even though he's not Derek Jeter, and Jeter probably wasn't as great as people think Derek Jeter was. Again, that's my negative Yankee bias coming out, but overall, Volpe is still a decent major league shortstop at the very least. So they have some young talent, and I think that that's going to hold them over a bit. Ultimately, though, I was shocked that the Yankees made their run last year to the World Series. I said all season, I said all postseason, Yankees are not getting to the World Series, and they proved me wrong. They did. But even if they did, I still feel like they kind of proved me right in the sense that they were just not that good of a team. And you saw that once they went up against the Dodgers. This year, I think they're a little worse of a team. Again, I think their young talent might be a little better, but I think their star power is clearly a little worse. No Juan Soto. No Garrett Cole. Judge, he's a big guy. Sometimes those big guys start to break down. And frankly, he's had a phenomenal run over the past handful of seasons. One, guys are due for a down year sometimes, even the best baseball players. But two, sometimes you only have that window of greatness for, let's say, 4 or 5 years where you're essentially unstoppable. And then you're still a really good baseball player, but you're not what you were MVP caliber like you were in those years. Maybe he gets me to eat my words and he wins another MVP. And that's possible. But I think it's possible for him to do that and them to still not win the division. The Blue Jays are dealing with the fallout from the no Vlad Guerrero deal. It's kind of like this dark, ominous cloud over them. It seems like Bo Bichette has really lost a lot of his high standings throughout baseball. I think it's him just trying to be more of a contact hitter and not caring so much about the power like the league cares about nowadays. I know they added Santander and a couple other solid names. Scherzer, we'll see if he's able to stay healthy and whatnot. But to me, they just have this feel of a team that's not going to get over that hump. Could I see them in the playoffs? Absolutely. I wouldn't be shocked if they're 2 in the East and a wild card team. But they still feel like a fringe 90-win team. Somewhere between 92 and maybe even 83 wins. And that's if kind of the wheels stay on and everything starts vibing and getting positive. Because they also have the potential of the wheels falling off. If they start off very slow and around the All-Star break or the trade deadline, they start looking at themselves 10, 12 games back of the division, they might start selling, gang. Bichette, Vlad, whoever. Don't be surprised if the Jays are an under 500 team or even around 500 team, they're selling major names at the deadline. In which case, they're not competing. So while the Blue Jays have, kind of somewhat buzz about them, still, it's less than it was a few years back. Or at least for the last few years, when everyone seemed to be really hot on this team. Now it kind of seems like it's the last run for this core that they have. And forever, I talked about how this core kind of had loser vibes to them. I've been proven right so far. We'll see if I'm continued proof right this year. And afterwards, I think the core breaks up. I really do. The Red Sox have the most buzz in the AL East to them for sure. They have a lot of good young players. They have some premier players at their position, Jarren Duran, whoever it may be. But ultimately, they're built around a lot of injury-prone players. Okay? Even Duran can be a bit of injury-prone, but then you got Trevor Story, you got Bregman, you got these guys that, again, just seem a little injury-prone and have been injury-prone in their career. And then at that point, Tristan Cassis has been injury prone. At that point, then, if you start losing a couple guys in that lineup, it starts looking a whole lot less scary. Now, Rafael Devers is still a star and a stud, but you want to talk about kind of a dark cloud. They bring in Bregman, and the Red Sox and GM are like, yeah, we'll play him wherever. We might play we might play him at second, but we might play him at third, and then we'll have Devers DH. And Devers said no. Devers said, I'm the third baseman. I'm not DHing. And if you look at defensive metrics, Bregman has been much better than Devers, who maybe is underrated defensively, but Bregman won the Gold Glove last year, I believe. So now you got this little controversy, this little back and forth. I really think the Red Sox have a lot of intrigue to them. Certainly Garrett Crochet going to them is a guy that we talked about wanting on our team. I don't love the mental of Garrett Crochet, but it also does make sense in the Chris Sale type thing. Oh, we go from the White Sox to the Red Sox, this big lefty. finally reaches his max potential and dominates. Sale was very good for the White Sox. Crochet has just been pretty good, had one good year last year. Again, an injury-prone guy. We'll see. We'll see what happens to those Red Sox. Boston's that type of franchise. I said this last year at this time when there was the exact opposite buzz about them. There was negative buzz about the Red Sox. And I said, anytime people are expecting nothing from the Red Sox, it seems like they're in the mid-80s plus wins and they're competing. And then anytime that they're talking up the Red Sox as being like, hey, this is the year the Red Sox might dominate the East, they fall short. And they might not even win 500, be 500 at the end of the season. I think they will be. I think they're going to be right in the wild card hunt at least. But I'm very optimistic about where our guys fall when you look at the Yankees, the Blue Jays, the Red Sox. And then, of course, you get the Rays, who are pesky. And I think they're going to be better than projections show. But ultimately, I don't see them competing for the division. And it's potentially one of the worst teams in baseball. Like, if things don't go right or they get a bad injury or two, they may be cellar. They may be the bottom of the bottom. Now they're also going to be playing the season at George Steinbrenner Field. That's just weird. The Yankees spring training field. That's just odd to me. And I mean, it is what it is. The Tropicana Dome got wrecked and now they're not even remodeling it. Who knows what happens to the Rays at this point, because another deal just fell through as far as redoing their stadium or getting a new stadium. I don't even know. They're a mess. I think that kind of lingers, and the fact that they're playing in George Steinbrenner Field, I don't think is going to work positively for them. It's going to be good for their power numbers, I believe, because it's more of a short porch. However, it's also going to be positive for the visiting hitters also. And don't be surprised, gang, when there are some high run games for the Rays this season, and they cannot compete, losing like 12-2 at home, sort of games. That's what I'm kind of envisioning. So, always pesky, the Tampa Bay Rays, but I don't see them competing for this division, in which case it really is just, to me, the Orioles division again, gang. We didn't win it last year. We won it the year before. I think we win it again this year. I really do. I think we are far and above the best team in the AL East. Maybe the whole AL. Maybe the whole league. Outside of maybe the Dodgers. But baseball's funny. The best, highest paid team doesn't always win, gang. So it's about getting hot at the right time also. But you need a good season. You need to get there in order to win it. Now, we've had plenty of standouts this spring. We talked about some of the guys that were maybe some disappointing stat lines so far this spring. But we have a lot of guys who are really hitting the ball well. Talk about the catching prospects first. Adley and Basallo absolutely mashing. Adley seems to be back to his old self, and maybe even the best Adley Rutschman we've ever seen. I'm expecting huge stuff from Adley Rutschman this year. And even if he's not in the MVP talk statistically, remember, he's the gel that holds it all together. The Buster Posey, the Joe Mauer type guy. Love Adley. And certainly Basallo has been mashing all spring training. I couldn't be any more excited to see this kid get to the majors eventually. And that's just how talented the Orioles are, that they have to keep this kid off the roster at the moment. I get he's only 20 years old. I get he's still improving and working. But boy, he may become the best hitter on the Orioles on day one when he gets there. Other guys really doing well. Cowser and Heston are in the groove. That's great to see. You know I'm expecting big things from Colton Cowser. We talked about that an episode or two ago. Heston Kjerstad, I really think, continues taking that next step, and at the very least is just a consistent, solid, power-hitting outfielder for these Orioles this season. Morton, Sagano, and Povich have all pitched very well. At one point, not too long ago, they had a combined 0 ERA. I know Cade Povich has gotten roughed up since then. I think maybe Morton or Sagano had 2. But that was only a few days ago, gang. And they had a combined 0 ERA between those 3. And it continues to give me hope for this rotation. We're going to talk about that next segment. And then also, you love seeing Jackson Holliday really rebounding and having himself a solid camp. We know he had a great camp last year also, and it didn't translate so much to Major League Baseball in the regular season. However, after that first stint, we know he was okay. Not great, but okay in that second stint. And now it just seems just like Povich. He has this confidence. He has this aura. He really is figuring it out. I've seen reports about the toe tap that he kind of took from Ohtani. And that was a big thing. You know, he had this high leg kick, and that just wasn't working in the majors. Hopefully this toe tap has really just unleashed a beast in Jackson Holliday. And also Ryan Mountcastle having himself a solid camp. You know, maybe not the most home runs. I think he's still at 1, maybe 2. But ultimately, Ryan Mountcastle is poised to have a big year. Hopefully, he can finally find some luck when it comes to the health. We know that time and time again, it seems like he's getting unlucky with health problems. But hopefully, Mountie can stay on the field and produce, because we know he's one of the most likely beneficiaries of the shorter left field wall in Camden Yards now. So let's go to that rotation, because it's easy without Grayson Rodriguez and Kyle Bradish for many people to hit the panic button and unload a lot of negativity and really not have much faith in this rotation. But I'm the other way. I have confidence even without Grayson and Bradish. Now, we might not have that number 1 elite ace, right? Hopefully, Grayrod comes back and becomes that ace. And hopefully then Bradish comes back at some point and becomes that second ace. That'd be nice. That'd be great. But if that doesn't happen, gang, we still have a lot of solid, reliable Major League starters in this rotation. Just look at Morton and Sagano, provided that consistent veteran leadership. Now, we know Sagano hasn't played Major League Baseball yet. He's been pitching in Japan for 12 years or whatever it's been. Morton has been pitching in Major League Baseball, it seems like, since I was in diapers, which is not accurate, but not maybe that far off. They are both just going to provide, again, consistent, solid starts. When you're at that level of being this poised veteran, whether it be in the majors or just professional baseball, you understand how you need to go out and give your team a chance to win. You don't need to go out and throw a perfect game. You don't need to go out and throw a shutout every game. You just need to keep your team in a position to win. And that's what those two guys especially are not only going to provide for this rotation, but also be able to teach the other pitchers in it, it's okay. It's okay to give up 3 or 4 runs in 5 innings. Keep your team in it. Mitigate the damage. Because we have an offense that can come back time and time again if we get in that spot. But they're probably not coming back if we let up 7, 8 runs. If we let up 3 to 4, they can get that. I trust our guys can get that. Eflin, I think, provides some of that as well. Obviously, he's been around the block plenty. Maybe not as old as Morton or Sagano, but really, again, just a veteran presence and a guy that understands that it's okay to not have a perfect inning. It's okay to let up a run and not have that manifest into 2, 3, 5, 7 runs. It's everything. Keep your team in the game. Kramer also, I feel like, has, again, shown a lot in the past couple years about improving his consistency, understanding just what I was talking about, not worrying if you give up a run or two, understanding you need to just keep this team in the ball game. With the shorter left field porch, I'm a little worried maybe he gives up more home runs, and maybe he's the one who isn't necessarily keeping us in the game the way we need him to. But I also have optimism that he can take that next step and become a solid middle of the rotation pitcher in a major league roster. A positive, successful, winning major league roster at that. Cade Povich, we know, has shown phenomenal stuff. I talked about his aura. I talked about his positive stats. And it looks like he maybe unlocks something great going back to last year. Again, in that September, he really pitched phenomenal. And it seems like that is just carried over into this year. And he's also a guy that when things got ugly on him, again, he wasn't keeping this team in the game. He was letting up 5, 6, 7+ runs. That's not going to cut it. But understanding that if you just keep your team in the game, just get some outs, it's okay if they score a little, keep them in it, then we'll win a lot of those games. I think he understands that as well. And he's really tooling his arsenal to accommodate that strategy. So even without an ace, I expect a lot of good starts from these guys, gang. It reminds me a little of like 2014 when you had Chris Tillman, Y.E. Chen, Miguel Gonzalez. Like, again, names that are not setting the world on fire. Names that going into those seasons, we were like, oh my God, we don't have an ace. Why didn't we get an ace again? But we just had guys that were just giving us solid, consistent starts. And really just keeping you in all of these ball games. And when you have the offense like we do, and you have the bullpen like I expect us to have, gang, you're going to win a lot of baseball games with that formula. You don't need the ace necessarily. It's nice to have that guy, the guy to stop a losing streak, the guy that when he takes the mound, you know we have a chance to win today. But I don't think there's going to be that many long losing streaks in that situation for this team, gang. Sure, we'll have some. I don't doubt that. That's just baseball. But it's okay to have one of these consistent, solid starters be just as good as that ace to put a stop to that. If anything, it might be more beneficial than having just a top-heavy rotation. And then, when we get back Grayrod, hopefully, when we get back Bradish, hopefully, gang, look how good of a starting pitching rotation we could have. So that's why I'm optimistic about this starting staff. That's why I feel great about the Orioles this season. And just like you, in the offseason, I was not feeling great about this pitching staff. I was not thrilled about the acquisitions. I was not over the moon about what they did to the staff. I wish we brought back Burns. I wish we went out and got this guy. I wish we traded for Crochet. Like, yeah, these are all the thoughts I had. And then in the aftermath, you can take a step back and go, I kind of see what they did there. And we have just 5 solid, reliable starters. And that's not including Grayrod and Bradish currently. I think we have 5 very solid, reliable Major League starters that are going to keep you in games and give you solid start time and time again. And maybe won't be up for Cy Young. That's okay. Because we're going to be up for maybe 100 wins. I'll take that. I'll take that. Now, I just mentioned how good I felt the bullpen would be. And obviously, the key member is Felix Bautista. So let's do what now feels like our annual or daily Mountain Report, gang. So Bautista's second appearance had good and bad moments. We know he got into a game for the first time after our last episode. Or in our last episode, we discussed. This time he had a second appearance, and again, some good, some bad. The box score might look a little ugly, giving up base runners, giving up runs, but the radar gun looked promising. Still under 100 miles an hour, which is obviously kind of not only the metric you want to see across the board in baseball nowadays, but for Felix Bautista, who's used to throwing 101, 102, 103. So he's still under that 100 threshold. However, It was faster than his first outing was. And as we've heard, each time these Orioles have talked about how his fastball is ticking up each appearance he gives. So this outing, he averaged 97 miles an hour and maxed out at 99. So he's right there, gang. Certainly a couple miles an hour difference is everything when it comes to pitching, or a lot when it comes to pitching. I shouldn't say everything. But again, if he remains on track with this trajectory, and time again his velocity is ticked up with each appearance, you only assume that the next time we see him, he's probably touching 100. And maybe by the time opening day comes, he's touching 101, 102. And then maybe a few weeks in this season, we're back seeing 103, who knows, 104. Sometimes these guys come out throwing harder after Tommy John. So that's the positive, gang, is that Felix Bautista looks like he's on track to become himself again. And he's starting to feel good just in the process. Like he's really feeling good after these appearances. I haven't heard any negative talk about, after this appearance, he didn't feel great or whatever. That, and none of that stuff. None of that. Also, there also is the chance that maybe he's not even throwing 100% right now. We've seen that with Grayson Rodriguez at times, where the Orioles say, hey, don't throw 100%. So there's a chance he's not even throwing at 100% at the moment in these games, and he's still almost hitting 100. So I feel great about Felix Bautista, and it's a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's a huge key to this team, gang, as we know. We had the whole debacle last year with the closer situation. I get it. Kimbrel did not work out, and it was what it was. But hopefully this year, Felix Bautista is back with a secure role in that closer spot, dominating like we're so used to seeing the Mountain dominate. So now I'm very excited about this next topic. We're going to call it Bird Power Surge, because I really think there's a good chance the Orioles lead the major leagues in home runs this season. Now, last season, they were second in the league with 235 home runs. Yankees led at 237, so we just missed out, 2 back of the Yankees. Okay, and we'll get to breaking down why the Yankees are going to go down. Well, let's just knock that out of the way now. The Yankees only had 3 guys, despite leading the league in home runs, only 3 guys with 15 or more home runs. Judge at 58, Soto at 41, Stanton at 27. Well, we know Soto's gone, and Stanton, we have no idea when he's coming back. And we talked about how maybe Judge is potentially at that point in his career where it's maybe not going to go down like this, but just like that. And even so, if it's even the slightest bit, that 58 turns to 51 real quick, gang. And so, yeah, the Yankees, I expect to lose numbers on their home runs. Again, I think Ben Rice and Dominguez and Wells and maybe Volpe are going to improve their power numbers. Bellinger should hit a lot of home runs for them, so they did bring in some power also. But the Yankees, I expect to go down from that number. And I expect the Orioles number to go up. Well, why is it that I expect the Orioles number to go up when they lost their leading home run hitter in Santander? That's 44 home runs out the door. Gunner's total was at 37 last year. And yeah, he struggled in the back half. So there's a chance he improves upon that number. But there's also a chance maybe he goes down a little. I expect him above 30 home runs. But would it be crazy if he only hit 28 to 32? No, it wouldn't be that insane. So why am I expecting the Orioles to have better home run numbers? Well, last year they only had 3 guys with 20-plus home runs. Santander and Gunner, like we talked about, and then Colton Cowser at 24. I believe Colton Cowser is going to improve upon that home run number. We talked about that. I think he could hit 30. I think he could hit 40. You bring in newcomers, of which hit home runs when healthy. Tyler O'Neill, absolute powerhouse of a man. Ripped, shredded, jacked up, dude. And yeah, has some health concerns, but when he's out there, he should not only be hitting home runs, but especially now that the left field wall is farther in than it was the past few years. Gary Sanchez also, who was one of the guys in my mind, along with Gleyber Torres, who really took advantage of that old short porch in left at Camden Yards. Those guys were nightmares for the Yankees with us. And I swear, those two names, especially Gleyber, are the reasons why they pushed the fence back so much. But also, Gary Sanchez should provide more power than James McCann did last year. Now, I like McCann. McCann offered some pop and had his moments, but Gary Sanchez has just shown that he hits more home runs. And we'll break down some numbers more, but I just want to systematically go down this, right? Then you have the core group, okay? Obviously, Gunnar and Cowser, like we talked about, but then Adley, Mounty, O'Hearn, Heston, Westberg, and Holiday. You have possible guys, you have guys that possibly could be reasons to maybe add to these home run numbers in Mullins, Mateo, Urias, and Laureano. And then you also have the possible power-happy prospects that might get called up in Coby Mayo, who we should see at some point this year, and Sam Basallo, who, the way he's hitting, could potentially force a call-up at some point, okay? Now, will all those guys hit 20-plus home runs? No. But all those guys I mentioned could hit 20-plus home runs, right? And if healthy, a large number of them should hit 20-plus home runs. Adley had 19 last year despite a horrible second half. So he was right there. He should break that threshold. Westy had 18 in only 107 games last year because of multiple injuries. He should break that number. Mullins had 30 in 21 and 18 last year, okay? So he's broken 30 before. And last year, he only came too short of 20. Mounty had 33 back in 2021 and 22 in 22. So he's shown the ability, when healthy again, to break that number. And especially when healthy with not an enormous wall in left field. Just a normal wall. So even if that just adds a couple home runs to his total, 2 or 3 this year, that will help him potentially get over 20. Because we all know he was the Oriole who lost the most home runs to that great wall of Baltimore. Ryan O'Hearn and Ramon Urias each had double-digit home runs last year. And we'll see if Urias stays on the team the whole season. I could see the potential exit for him at some point. But Ryan O'Hearn has just consistently been solid. We talked about how I don't see really a chance that he goes back down to how bad he was with the Royals. It's a chance maybe he breaks through the ceiling in this contract year. We talked about that. But even if that doesn't happen, I believe he still is going to remain a solid, consistent power bat that makes good contact for this team. So it's certainly possible for him to absolutely break through with 20 plus, especially because, like we talked about in a couple episodes ago, he was one of the most unlucky players in baseball last season. So you expect maybe that luck to turn around a little and more balls to get out for him. Tyler O'Neill, the new bring-in like we just talked about, has twice hit over 30, 34 in 2021, 31 in 2024. We're only asking for 20 plus. If he stays healthy, he might even be a lock for 30. Gary Sanchez has hit 20 plus 4 times in his career and 19 in 2023 in just 72 games. So, assuming he stays healthy, I expect to see him in more than 72 games for us. And hopefully, that results in 20 plus home runs. Heston Kjerstad had 6 home runs in 129 plate appearances, okay? That means he's on pace in a 400 plate appearance season for 18 home runs. So right there. And he may even find a way to crack 500 or creep to 500 plate appearances. Holiday, in his 190 at-bats, had 5 home runs. but none in the first 34 at-bats. So again, if you're extrapolating that, put that at 5 for every 150, Holiday should see 500 at-bats, I would imagine. That's 20 home runs this year. We talked about how the Yankees are going to decrease their number. We talked about the reason why the Orioles are going to increase their number. The new wall dimensions will certainly add home runs, but not a ton. Again, probably just 2 to 3 to most players that are affected, like a Mountcastle or a Westberg. But again, if you add those 2 to Westberg's numbers last year, that's 20 home runs. You add even 1 to a switch hitter like Adley, that's 20. This is what I'm talking about. Just consistently adding a little bit of numbers. A home run here, a home run there. These guys are just going to continue ticking up. Not to mention that core that I mentioned, the Gunnar, Cowser, Adley, Westberg, Holiday, maybe Mountie, maybe O'Hearn if you want to add that. But certainly that core 6 young guys are all improving, are all getting better pretty much each season. So it wouldn't be crazy for all 6 of their numbers to go up. For Mountie and O'Hearn's numbers to go up. For Gary Sanchez to improve upon James McCann's number last year. For Tyler O'Neill to come close to Anthony Santander's number last year. And then again, Mullins has the potential to improve on that number. Jorge Mateo, when he was so hot to begin last season, and when he's hot, he's hitting for power, gang, despite all that speed. Urias and Laureano has shown the reasons, or shown the signs to be able to get balls out. And Laureano now is playing in a smaller park, a better park than maybe he has in past seasons, especially when he was with the A's. And then eventual probable call-ups of Coby Mayo and Sam Basallo, 2 absolute powerhouse hitters who I expect to be able to contribute to those power numbers. I love the idea of these Orioles leading the league in home runs. I think, they're a lock for top 5 in home runs simply by the numbers. And, gang, we might have the best power hitting team in the league. And you want to talk about one of the positives to bringing in Tyler O'Neill, not only for his play, but it seems like he's kind of gotten in the young Orioles' heads to be kind of a bodybuilding team, if you will. Not that everyone's going to look as shredded and jacked as he does, but you see a lot of these guys wearing cut-off sleeves now, Adley rocking cut-off sleeves. A lot of these guys are getting into it more. Not that they weren't gym rats probably before, but listen, you just add that extra work ethic. You add some extra time with the weights. You add some extra time in the gym. You get more into it. I love the kind of meathead vibe that's going through the clubhouse right now. So now our next topic, a kid that we've kind of broken down a bit this spring training camp, and we talked about some signs that maybe we didn't love seeing from him, like his herky-jerky swing. But we're going to give him credit right now. Ayo for Mayo. Coby Mayo finally getting base knocks this spring. A few hits since our last episode. Just making good contact, getting better results. It's good to see because he was struggling hard for the first half of camp this year. And yeah, it was a very tough camp for Coby Mayo, guys. But you can learn positive things, get positive experiences out of that negativity, out of that toughness. And hopefully that was a positive learning experience for Coby Mayo. Even though it probably won't change his roster outcome this spring, it's just nice to see him get positive results because that's going to allow him to start his season in a positive mindset. Not necessarily go to the minors and start your season kind of all over the place and scrambling and worried and confused. No, now it just, you're more at ease, you're more relaxed, you can do what you've always done and go out and perform, and you've had these positive results recently to think back and get you to sleep easy. And it's all mental, gang. A lot of this is mental. Hopefully, like I said, he goes into his season on a positive note and plays great and forces himself another call-up. And hopefully at that point, succeeds with that call-up. Another AO is going to be for Basallo. Just wanted to keep talking about how amazing this kid not only is, but will be. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, and I truly believe it. He may wind up being the best Orioles hitter on day one he gets called up. But certainly in the grand scheme of it, when it's all said and done, he may be by far the best hitter of this young Orioles core. That's comprised of a lot of young great hitters. Gunnar, Adley, Cowser, Westy, Jackson. I think Basallo might wind up being the best out of all of them. Now, he could force his way to the big league call-up soon just by continuing to perform how he has been. Now, I don't know where the roster spot is. Maybe Gary Sanchez doesn't perform right. Maybe Ryan O'Hearn takes a step back, even though I don't see it. Maybe there's an injury. Whatever it may be, I don't see really the path at the moment. But boy, is he forcing his hand. And I cannot wait for the day that he does get called up and he is an Oriole. Because I'm picturing Miguel Cabrera, Victor Martinez. Like, that's the kind of guy. Sal Perez. Like, that's the kind of guy I'm picturing. And frankly, Sal Perez and Victor Martinez, I think is the low end, gang. Like I said, Miguel Cabrera might be the high end. One of the best hitters we've ever seen in baseball. Ever. I think that's what we have in Sam Basallo. I'm beyond excited. Over the moon, thrilled about it, gang. And yeah, my last topic, and I'm just going to wrap it up kind of with the same vibe that we've had all episode, which is just that my excitement is building, gang. My excitement is building not only because real baseball is almost here. You can smell it. You can feel it in the weather, in the air. But really, my excitement is through the roof for this team. Not just this year, but for the future. I just talked about Basallo and how I can envision him becoming Miguel Cabrera. Like, how can you not be excited for that? I just talked about that young core group of 6 guys right now in the majors that I think are all going to take this step forward and really turn into who they are, who they're supposed to be. It's amazing, gang. How could you not be excited? But I'm also excited about this year. Because like I said, this year feels similar to that 2014 year. Now we're younger and we have more potential, but we're still similar. Good, not great starters. No elite ace at the moment, at least. Just solid pitching every day. And an offense that you expect to get it done because they're one of the best offenses in baseball, if not the best offense in baseball. There's talent all over the field at every position. The cool part is right now, though, the talent we have compared to 2014 is not only more, but it's younger. And it's more talented, I think, with more potential ahead of them. And they're still growing and becoming who they can be. I really feel like we're in a position that we're going to make the ALCS. We are. I, in fact, had a dream the other night that we won the ALCS and won the pennant and was headed to the World Series. And I was sobbing in my dream, sobbing with happiness. I think that's happening, gang. I do. Again, I think we get to the ALCS again for the first time, I believe, since 2014 was the year we did it. And I think we might win the pennant too. And then we have a chance at the World Series, gang, whether it's the Dodgers we're facing or one of these other teams, the Phillies, the Padres, whoever, the Mets, whoever, maybe the Braves. That's kind of where I see the NL as far as contenders, but who knows? Season hasn't even started yet. I'm just feeling at least an ALCS appearance, which means at least we're winning some playoff games and a playoff series. I really think we might be the 1 seed, 100+ wins again. Just based off of what I talked about today. Solid starting pitching, game after game. a great bullpen like I expect, and one of, if not the, best offense in baseball. And again, for the future, I'm even more excited, gang. Because again, this core is still growing and improving. The sky is the limit for this team as a core. The core that they've built and the talent they have, the sky is absolutely the limit. Because we're going to have a future lineup consisting of Adley, Basallo, Holiday, Gunnar, Westberg, Mayo, Cowser, Heston. That's 8 of the 9 batters in the lineup in our future. And that's not including maybe Enrique Bradfield of Vance Honeycutt, who we just saw putting on a show. Gang, how could you not be excited? I am drooling at looking at that potential lineup. And frankly, you want to talk about murderer's row, when all of these guys are in their prime and all of them have found the player that they are. I mean, we're talking about potentially the greatest lineup ever. Ever. I mean, gang, if they all start reaching their potential at the same time, sky's the limit, gang. Then you look at the pitching staff. Obviously, there's Grayson, and he feels like an ace when he's healthy. Then you also have Povich and McDermott, who both look like they're going to be very solid starters. And that's just the very top. We have a few other prospects scattered around that could potentially be very solid major league starters as well. Don't forget, we got draft coming, and you can always make trades and add this and take that. Whatever it may be, gang, but as we're currently constructed, the system might not be as hyped up as it was in previous years, but it has a ton of talent left in it. Absolute a ton of talent. And just when you look back at that core I talked about, just feels like a special, special core who's going to win a lot of games and hopefully find themselves at least one, if not multiple championships in the future, gang. That's what we have in front of us. So be happy. Be excited. Like, don't be negative. It's okay to be a little pessimistic about this or that, or a little critical about whatever. But frankly, gang, remember the dark ages. Remember where we were not too long ago. And now to see the hope and the promise that we have in front of us. Because we're set up to win consistently for at least the next 3 to 5 years. If not a decade plus. Like, excuse me, gang. I tried to hold it in. I knew I was coming to the end. I was like, Ben, you only got a minute or two left. You can wrap this up. But no, sure enough, I tried to think of the cows. I tried to look at this up, and nope. Just made me sneeze. But no worries, we all sneeze, gang, and the allergies kill me this time of year. I don't know if you can hear the wheezing in my voice. But all I was saying, and how we're going to wrap up this episode, is that we are set up not only to win over the next 3 to 5 years, but keep this core together for the next 10 to 15 years, gang. Keep these guys together for their career, and great things are going to happen. Great things are coming to us Orioles fans, gang. We've waited so long. We've given us so much of you. We've believed in the Ryan Miners and the Jay Gibbons and whoever else, dude. I can name all of them. But ultimately, we've waited so long for this core. Just enjoy it, gang. Get excited. Get optimistic. Because I'm excited and I'm optimistic and I see the potential. And we're going to win a championship. Maybe this year, maybe in years to come. But it's coming, gang. This core is going to get us the championship. And I think this core is going to get us a pennant this year. At least an AL pennant, gang. And I'm excited. I can't wait. I cannot wait for the baseball season, just like 10 days away. 2 weeks till I'm in Baltimore, opening day at Camden Yards with a ton of you. I cannot wait, gang. I cannot wait. I'm excited. I'm excited. So without anything else to say today, we're going to get out of here. We're going to wrap up. I'm too excited. I got to get outside. I got to enjoy myself. I'm going to go get myself some Chipotle. And I'm excited to see everybody in 2 weeks at opening day. I will be back here at the next episode of the Talkin Baltimore Orioles podcast. Let's go, O's!